Hello and welcome to Left Coast Live. It is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, America's WASP, joined as always by the one and only Stat Pat, stateless patriot of the Central Valley. We are California lefties talking to you about national politics with a particular I-95 to I-5 kind of attitude.
Mhm.
And with us today is a very special guest that I am not going to wait any time to bring into the studio because he's such a big deal. Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report, the one and only, the guy. Let me before you get to say anything, I just got a couple quick notes for our audience, just in case, in the rare cases they haven't heard of you or know of your work. Mike has been in the game for 10 years. He got big, started getting big under the Bernie role before that law, which I want to ask you about, by the way, that allowed mainstream media to start posting their content on YouTube when during that 2016 race. I know you benefited from like that. YouTube was still at that time pretty very much indie, but you have done you have evolved, my man, with the beard and with the the set and with and no,
I've
I mean
tried.
you have gotten better and better every year as far as I'm concerned. And I've been
Thank you
watching
so
you now
much.
since 2018. That's
Same
about
here.
when
Wow,
I've been watching you. Yeah,
Same here.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Well, thank you
yeah.
so much for the warm welcome. I feel so
of
special.
course.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, I think it was the 18th of June where I officially hit 10 years, and it's crazy looking back at that first video I posted about Jeb
Yep.
Bush. Uh,
Mm.
it's wild. Like I look like a different person, and somebody had told me that I had underwent twink death, which is when a
Twink death.
yeah, it's when a gay man crosses 30 and he loses his twink status.
Oh
And that's
no!
kind of what I think has happened to me. At least that's like the gay interpretation of it. So I believe
That's
that
so
twink death
funny.
is part of it. Also, like just I think weathering the political storm, being aged by the bullshit is also part of it as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool to
well,
have people stick with me this long though.
you're still in your 30s and I'm jealous. I'm finding myself surrounded by like 36, 37, 38-year olds.
Mm, mm.
And I still feel like I'm 38 even though I'm 41 now. But yeah,
I feel
I
like
mean
I'm like
Well,
in my 70s, so
yeah, I
feels
mean
great.
yeah, I feel
the
like I've
weather
aged like
yeah, well
10 years the past.
psychologically, I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I feel like it's 10 years just the past 6 months. But
Seriously.
I'm about to turn 30 in 2 days, and I got friends that are watching that are going to get a hell of a kick out of that twink reference.
You'll officially undergo twink death, so congratulations.
Right?
Or,
No, of
I'm
course.
sorry. It depends on your perspective.
No, right? Yeah.
The economics of time, though, as you get older, a year feels shorter and shorter just because you've lived more of them. So I
Right.
know what you're talking about the weathering. And we were also, don't forget, before you got on camera and started talking about it, we had W that I'm sure you were paying attention to the news at the time, with the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and just like the return to Reaganomics, and it was just all backwards. Just the kind you could feel the country slipping back into bad old habits, right?
Hmm.
And then you had Obama, and we were like, oh, finally, we're going to get some big time change. And we got incrementalism at best.
Yeah.
And it's when you've lived through that as someone past puberty, when all that shit went down, or at least like able to like read a book on your own or read a newspaper article. Like my earliest news memory is the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.
Wow.
But I started paying attention to party politics in 92 with Bill Clinton, Ross Perot, and George H.W. Bush. So I feel like I have a certain street credibility simply because I was a senior in high school at 9/11 and I had been paying attention to politics up until that point. And now I see a lot of younger millennials coming on the scene. And my thesis, my suggestion is that we should leapfrog Gen Xers and have millennials out front for the left, because being children of 9/11, the 2008 housing crisis, and in very much the same way the greatest generation, or not really the greatest generation, but the boomers, put their kids in front of the TV instead of like teaching them things and interacting with them and building them up as people. Our parents kind of let the internet run away from them, you
Hmm.
know, and it was their kind of cop out and lazy, being lazy parents. And the Gen Xers are just way too capitalist, man. They got out of college in time to benefit from the tech boom, and they're way too married to capitalism. So what do you think about that generational change that I think you've heard me advocate for in other arenas?
I agree. Yeah, the one addition is I think I would include most of Gen Z. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I think millennials are the best generation because we are the most progressive. But Gen Z as well. But yeah, I like the idea of leapfrogging Gen X. I feel like, and this is a generalization, of course, COVID really broke their brains, and
Right.
that's not something that they've recovered from. They've become increasingly conservative, even more so than boomers, arguably, depending on the election. So, no, I think that's a phenomenal idea. I'm tired of like the whole wait your turn. We have to go through the process where this generation takes power and the next. Like, if we don't get change immediately, we're all gonna die. So, yeah, toss them to the side, and I think it's our turn for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I mean, at this point, it's like the best ideas win, and like we see it with Zoran Mamdani. He's a millennial, and like it really doesn't matter like where like how old you are at this point. I mean, if we could, if age didn't even matter, if the passage of time wasn't a thing, like I'd say go for it again, Bernie. But we heard him on Joe
Hmm.
Rogan. But like I'm like Joe, I'm 83 years old. I'm not running again. But
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he still doesn't like he was too nice in that interview with Joe
no,
Rogan.
yeah,
Like
I
Bernie,
agreed,
Yeah.
Bernie
agreed.
could have
Yeah.
used, I'm telling you, man, Bernie could have used a WASP coach like me. Be like, dude, let me tell you how to assert yourself as intellectually superior to somebody else. Because I
Hmm.
think I talk a lot about this, Mike, on this channel, is I think the left has a problem with equality. And by that, I mean that it's this anybody can be a winner, anybody can be a political leader on the left, you know, and that's a superficial application of diversity, right? I'm
Hmm.
all for diversity, the purpose of diversity. You tell me if you have a better definition, but I think the purpose of diversity is to create an equal opportunity society. I'm down for that. That should be the goal. But the way we get there is not going to have anything to do with what the end goal is. The way we acquire power and create that equal opportunity society is through political competition. And that's why I want my political athletes to be competitors. And I think I've mentioned on your monthly Zooms before, a lot of the lefties don't like competition. You know, we got all the artists. A lot of artists don't like fighting. They don't like competition. They don't watch the NFL. They don't even necessarily, they don't pay attention to politics for different reasons. You know, I know a lot of people who don't pay attention to politics because they're just immersed in American entertainment culture, and you know they have other things going on. But you know, we got a lot of artists that, and just creative people, and you know, just for other various reasons, they're just decent people that don't like competition. And my whole point is that there's kind of, right, there's three levels. There's superficial followers, there's followers who volunteer for campaigns, and then there's actually people who are in the system running for office or working for people who are running for office. And so I'm trying to advocate for you know, people to get involved and stay involved.
Hmm.
So I don't know what, if you're into that whole argument about the goal of an equal opportunity society, but the way we get there is by putting, you know, kind of people who hate losing, who have a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. You know, there's that
Yeah.
that's the ethos. Is like, I am here to fight and I'm pissed off, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
On top of that too, another I mean another thing that try to get out there with this channel is political marketing. Like it. the more I see from, like, just to use him as an example, from Zoran Mondani, he's the whole package.
Mhm.
He's got the marketing down, he's got the messaging down, he's got the policy down. He's a fighter, he's a competitor. He went into the race like, I'm going to win this, and that it's that attitude that should carry the progressive movement. And
Mhm.
if leftists can get behind just that attitude, that framework, just like model his campaign, I think you're going to see, with that strategy, so many more Mamdanis pop up around the country.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of what you both are saying, or at least what I think you're saying, I think that everybody has a role to play. Not everybody is a natural leader. I think
Right.
leadership matters in movements. I know that, like, as lefties, we like to try to be as horizontally organized as possible, but I don't think that's realistic, especially in this capitalist society that we're in. So, having said that, though, everybody has a role to play. I might not be a leader politically. I don't think I could do as what Zoran Mamdani does, but I think I'm good at explaining things and being an attack dog. Both of you great at being attack
Yeah.
dogs. Everybody has different roles to play, and everybody makes a contribution to varying degrees, and I think that that's really important. So, in terms of like making sure everybody has an equal seat at the table, I'm absolutely in favor of that. In terms of the movement, though, I do think we do. We have to make ourselves more goal oriented, and that's a little bit of a vague term because the left has always been very amorphous. It's barely organized to the extent that there is a left in this country really is debatable. It's a loose coalition of liberals and lefties in the Democratic Party. There's no real left. Like, there's no communist
No, yeah.
organization that has really strong influence. There's DSA, but even that is minimal compared to other countries. So I think that you've got to have the people who are going to drive the message forward. Zoran Mamdani, excellent,
Mhm.
excellent version of that. And then you've got to have the people who are the assholes. That's
Mhm.
me. That's Dieter. That's StatPat. People who don't have to worry about being too offensive. Just saying, hey, we're gonna give you healthcare, and if you don't like it, you're an idiot. Fuck you. There's just like different roles for people to play. So I hope that that
Right, but
makes
the
sense what I'm
dream,
saying.
Yeah, no, I
I
agree.
no, it totally makes sense. And I think that the job for you, if you were to kind of cross over into the arena, would be like press secretary, or
Yeah.
some sort of like work the media. Like I have,
Mhm.
there's a great expression: are you working this, or is this working you? So you say, are you working the media, or is the media working you? And that's what we
Mhm.
can learn from Trump's success, is that if you have
Yeah.
enough, and I've got to tell you, I'm an expert on
Yeah.
the subject because I'm a WASP. If you have enough entitlement in front of the camera, you can get the media to work for you.
That's
You
that's
just
a
have
good
to know.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, like we even talk about this all the time. Like, the left could really learn from Trump, and the fact that, like, Trump
Hmm.
sets the narrative. Like the whole coverage surrounding this disastrous bill was, like, it was all centered around the framing of the Republicans and the way that Trump framed it. It wasn't so much about how bad like the bill was per se. There wasn't any, like, actual definitive statement. This is like, this is what's going to happen. This is why it can't pass. It was all hands off. There's too much, especially when it comes to the media. There's too much of a neutrality bias, and I think if the left does have a future in political marketing, and it piggybacked off of, like, Zoran Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders, whatever, it is setting the narrative, setting definitions, differentiating the left from the establishment. Because a good example,
Yes.
like right now, what we see with the whole um, Epstein list not existing, apparently,
Right.
is a lot of a lot of conservative figures, a lot of conservative influencers and pundits, trying to cast everybody, um, who would be like affiliated with Epstein, who's part of, like, the Democratic establishment, as the left, and that's just totally,
Hmm.
that's like totally dishonest, because, like, we're not even, like, we call this shit out, but the conservatives continue to get away with casting anyone to the left of them as broadly the left
Communist.
when
Yeah.
when there's clearly a difference between the
Yes.
Democratic Party insider elites and actual leftists who don't actually believe in the goals of neoliberalism and centrism, and those Democratic Party elites that defend ghouls like Bill Clinton and Andrew
Very
Cuomo, et
few
cetera, et
people
cetera.
appreciate very few
Right.
people appreciate the nuances and the divisions on the
No,
left.
they
And I got to
don't.
tell you,
Yeah.
you mentioned it now. You mentioned it, Mike, and I'm the Secretary of Communications for my local chapter. But if you want to get to know the different factions of the left, just go get involved with the DSA because they're
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. We got everybody from communists to anarchists to socialists to FDR Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. So I actually do think that the DSA could be the catalyst for this kind of momentum to snowball. But because Mamdani is a dues paying member of the DSA, I mean, that's huge. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge building block. We can build on that. Because I was on the megaphone at the No Kings rally getting people to sign up for the DSA, and I was saying things like
Nice.
Bernie was right, and join the DSA, make your activism matter, like trying to be like, okay, it's great that you're here, but let's get you more involved,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
And
that's a
and
really
that's
good thing to do, especially for
yeah,
normies that would be more inclined to show up to a No Kings protest
and
Yeah.
who are
that's
just
and
pissed
and
off.
what I'm trying to get the DSA is to do two things. One is with its outreach, it's like, hey, there's like three levels of being a member, just informal levels. There's like just you pay your dues, maybe you show up to the meetings, maybe you don't. You pay your dues, you show up to the meetings every time, and then you pay your dues, but you're on the steering committee. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when you're really involved, is when you're on the steering committee or in a working group. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, so that the point of that pitch is that you don't have to be a superstar if you want to join the DSA and add value. You can
Right.
just have to be passionate about it and ready to learn, right? Like I'm coming in there with a big listening cap on when it comes to the isms, the communism and the socialism and the
Mm-hmm.
Marxism. And I'm doing a lot of listening in the theory conversations. What I'm not going to be doing a lot of listening on is the electoral strategy, like how to win elections,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I understand competition better than most lefties. But I do think the DSA could assert itself as but it's a little countercultural for it to do it because you need a concentration of leadership, and that is interestingly enough coming up at the convention in August, which I'm going to. So I'm going to see if I can get my hands on their YouTube channel because they have 8,000
Mm-hmm.
subscribers, but they don't produce any content. They just did a couple of videos on Mamdani, but I mean, they should be doing content every day.
Right.
There should be a full-time employee that is doing nothing but having interviews and doing news
Mm-hmm.
and bringing people like you and Kulinski and all of the progressive left on there, and being like, what do and talking about what the DSA is and talking about the ideology and talking about, because it's not just Medicare for all, right? It's Medicare for all or something better. We don't know what the perfect
Mm-hmm.
system is. So that's where those kinds of conversations could take place. But it's a little countercultural because the DSA is so decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that if there is an institution on the left that can really be the vehicle for what we all want, which is the transformation of the Democratic Party into the progressive Democratic Party, then I think the DSA is our best vehicle right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that it's really useful to have a centralizing force that kind of serves as like a proxy for the aggregate left. It's never going to be perfect because as we all know, the left, is constantly bickering about random shit, sometimes
Hmm.
substantive, sometimes stupid. Um, but the point in doing that is to really set the agenda. With the right, we
Right.
are
Yep.
always playing on their terms. We're always showing up to the
Yes.
table with a set of predetermined or pre-selected conversations we're allowed to have. We could talk about woke because they're talking about it. We could talk about this or that because they're talking about it. We need to be the ones who are actually monopolizing discourse, and you can't really do that if there's no like one cohesive message that's getting across. And it's hard to do that with the left. It's like fucking herding cats. But we should be talking about what the country could look like if workers own the means of production, or if there was more democracy in the workplace. These are the kinds of conversations that we should be having. But because there's really like this loud megaphone on the right that blasts out everything, we kind of have no choice but to respond to the shit that they put out. And I think that, to your point, Dieter, about DSA kind of like grabbing the microphone and trying to set the agenda, that's really important. And it's not that like this isn't possible to take that microphone away from the right, because we saw this happen in 2019 during the Democratic Party primary, where for the first time it really felt like candidates were able to snatch the megaphone away from Republicans. Even the liberals, right? Beto O'Rourke was talking about, hell yeah, I'm going to take your AR-15s.
Right.
Not the smartest strategy, in my opinion, just because I'm not I'm for a common sense gun regulation, but like I think that you have to try to present your ideas in a way that doesn't scare off normies. But I mean, just like with the way that they were able to take the microphone away, and how we were talking about Medicare for all legitimately debating it like on the national stage, that was really powerful. So the fact that it's mostly Republicans who are shaping discourse, that's something that we can't allow to happen. So yeah, I think that things that you both are talking about, I think that would possibly facilitate like the transfer of discourse, or control of discourse rather, to us away from the right.
No, I completely agree, and it really is about like setting the narrative and not like not being on the back foot, not being on the defense at all times, and not to mention um when it comes to like actually saying the narrative, and like you have to meet people where they're at too.
Yeah.
So like,
But who are you talking about? Are you talking about politicians or political figures?
Oh,
Or
both.
both?
Like
Okay.
when it comes down
Yeah,
to
I'm
ultimately, like you need
kind
to
of like
level.
us at the local level with peers interpersonally, but also mostly politicians and people in our space, like who do content creation. That's kind of like who I'm referring to, at least.
Right,
Okay.
because all three of us are on the West Coast, and not everything that we say is going to resonate with every part of the country. They
Hmm.
say all politics is local. Y- when it comes to like, I couldn't believe that what you just said, Dieter, about like the DSA having like there's a channel, but all the AK subs. How are they not utilizing that? There should be more people involved
Exactly.
with that, like
Hmm.
volunteers that make videos. Maybe
I
there's
think it's
certain
a
parts of the
product of this.
country.
It's a product of the decentralization of the
No,
organization, where
Hmm.
the chapters are individual. But I just want to say that I think the win, right, that I'm looking for, or how I know the DSA has arrived as the institution, like to not be fucked with, like the Heritage Foundation of the left,
Hmm.
is when they get a voice on Meet the Press. Instead of like
Hmm.
guys like Jonathan Martin from Politico, it's like so and so, chair of the DSA or secretary of communications to the DSA, coming in here and talking about what's going on in the DSA circles and the circles
Hmm.
of the reasonable left. And that's the thing. What do you think of the label radical left? Because I'm like I'm a little lukewarm about it. I'll be honest. I think there's a better, like
like
the righteous
embracing it.
left. Like I just think it's
Yeah.
not really, because it's not really radical. Like the ideas aren't radical. These ideas all, like the basics are in FDR's second Bill of Rights, which was healthcare, education, housing, employment, farmers' rights, social security. Um, those are the ones I can remember anyway. And so it's like
Hmm.
these ideas aren't radical. They've been around for a while, and some places, a lot of places, already have them. So why can't we?
Yeah, I think a really good way to gauge just how radical the American left is to look at the way that the international left reacts to the so-called radical left. On my videos
Right.
about Zoran Mamdani, so many people were like, "Oh, these are his policies: affordable housing, rent freezes, city-run grocery stores." These are not radical policies. We have them
Right.
in Europe. We've had them in Scandinavia for decades. This is not radical. Like your so-called radicals are our centrists here.
Right.
It's just laughable. There is absolutely no radical left. It's radical in the sense that, like, the Overton window is so far to the right that to the American electorate, they might be perceived as radical. But I mean, if you poll people on these issues, as you both know by now, I mean, like, these policies are extremely popular. I think that real radicalism is like old school communism, even like Euro
Right.
communism these days. is not necessarily radical. A lot of these communist parties in Europe are basically sock dems. They don't advocate for
Yeah.
abolishing the state. So there really is
Right.
no radical left that like is as radical as the right wingers are, right? There should be a radical
Right.
left. I think there absolutely needs to be a strain of leftism in this country that's like radical communism that advocates for a moneyless, stateless society. Because even if you don't necessarily agree with that, that's useful on the left because it shifts the Overton window back to the left and it normalizes sock dem
Right.
positions to where they don't seem as extreme. So, like, that's why I
Exactly.
think it's useful to do what you said and have like the DSA and some of us try to really monopolize discourse because Americans don't have a real sense of like the entire political spectrum. Like this is the whole spectrum, but we're getting like this small portion on the right. You
Yes.
know, and Democrats are also on the right, comparatively
Yeah.
speaking. If you look at other Democratic parties, not Democratic parties, I'm sorry, centrist European parties, although I will say that like Labour and Liberals in Canada, they're also moving to the right as well. But you know, it just we don't have the full range of ideology represented. It's fascism or conservatism in this country, and that cannot be
That's right.
acceptable.
No, that's actually really interesting. There really should be. I actually really like that idea. A militant communist faction, a vocal faction in the United States to just drag that Overton window back to the
Yeah.
left because like
Hmm.
even if like I'm not particularly a communist and I don't particularly agree with a lot of communist sentiment, I'm sympathetic to definitely a whole lot of it, definitely as a leftist myself. But if something like that was put in place and was vocal enough to where like you would have to get like the actual sock dems that we have in government to not align with them, like no, I that's a bit too far left for me. That could actually be really useful in actually empowering sock dems and democratic socialists, just by being able to differentiate themselves from the actual more extreme left, because it's all about the narrative. If they're
Hmm.
already being painted as communists and extremists and whatnot, which is ridiculous, by the media and the right, having that very far left faction there just to scare the shit out of the establishment, but be there to differentiate from the actual democratic socialists that we support could be useful. I
Yeah.
actually like that idea
Yeah,
a lot.
that's my thoughts at least, my hopes at least, right? And I think it would
Right,
be refreshing.
in a perfect world, yeah,
Yeah, like we should be beyond like in 2025, this is the future. At least I envision this is the future as a kid. We should be beyond talking about, hey, we should have Medicare for all. We should just have it. We should be talking about like what society should look like going forward. You know, the
Yes.
differences between communism and socialism. Not, hey, how bad are we going to let capitalism get? Are we going to let it kill all of us or just most of us? Like we have to
right,
change the parameters here because it's very clearly not working, and I think that that's why you know candidates like Zoran Mamdani are so useful because what they do is it's something that Hassan typically labels as hiding their power levels. Where if you go back to some of
yes.
Zoran Mamdani's old tweets, he's talking about seizing the means of production. He's quoting Marx. Love it, love it.
He
I
did a
wish he
video
was
for the
more
Grinnell
radical.
Institute. Yeah, yeah, he was on the
Yeah,
Grinnell Institute some years back too. So it's like, oh, that's the guy. He's it's crazy.
yeah,
Yes,
but if you listen to him, you have no sense that he like what he's proposing in the American context is super radical, right? Because like just saying I'm going to do something for you and give you free things,
hmm,
that's very radical. But his policies are packaged in a very easy to digest way,
bingo.
and that's what I think we need to replicate. Like instead of talking about socialism, like we need to try to desensitize people to that word so they're not afraid of it.
Yeah,
But instead of saying socialism, just be like, hey, like my boss is a dickhead, your boss is a dickhead. Like, what if, you know, our jobs were democratic like government because we spend most days of our lives at these jobs. Why shouldn't we have democracy? Why don't we get to vote on
yeah,
decisions that affect all of us? I think
yeah,
reframing it, but also like doing that to other policies is really important. And that's where you have success from people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Zoran Mamdani. But the problem is the scalability. Like, there's just not enough people doing that. You have
right.
to have people like Zoran come along and show that it's successful. And little by
Right.
little, that's happening. But it's
He,
happening against the Democratic Party trying to stop it from happening. So there's a lot that we're working with here. But I think that, like, we're on the right course. It's just a matter of, like, taking that and growing it exponentially.
Yeah, he really is a flash in the pan because literally, like, he has it so well put together that the only thing they have on him is, oh, he's Muslim and he calls himself a socialist. Be
Hmm.
scared. Like that's it. If that's all anyone has, the establishment, the media, the conservative right, he's gonna skate on by pretty much unscathed. They're going to
Hmm.
they're still digging. They're still digging up his past, trying to find anything, fling it at the wall, and just see if it sticks. And so far,
Yeah.
to no avail.
The latest is they're accusing him of anti-Italian discrimination for flipping off a Christopher Columbus statue. So I'm enjoying
Bullshit.
this so much. The
No, me
attacks on
too.
him. This is the first time I've ever been enjoying attacks on a progressive just to see them fumble.
See
It's
how
really
creative they
honestly
can.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're trying so hard. Bless their hearts.
didn't
Mhm.
didn't the New York Times say don't vote for Mamdani?
Yeah, yeah. They said don't
Their
rank him.
editorial.
Oh wow.
Yep. Yeah.
New York fucking Times. Give me a
The New
break.
York Times, man, that has come a long way.
Hmm.
What a pathetic. I mean, when I was growing up, the New York Times was it, man. Like if you read one
Yeah.
newspaper every day, you read the New York Times, and now they just are a joke. They're a
No, of
joke.
course. Them, the
Like
Yeah.
the,
It's
the
Washington
sad.
results,
Post.
the
Yeah.
fact that he won so big shows
Yeah.
how out of touch they are.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're
And
misreading the moment in a very, very significant way.
Yeah, and
are
that's the thing
you
too. Like you don't even have to like cloak or frame your policies under the veneer of socialism. You
Hmm.
can if anything, you could market your beliefs, your policy ideas, like Mamdani's, as, oh, this is the moderate position because most people support it, and it could go
Hmm.
a
Well,
long
you just need
way.
to.
Right.
I mean, in a more basic, just practical way, if I were coaching politicians, I would be like, just stay away from the isms and talk
Yeah,
about problems and solutions.
that's it.
Yeah,
Get back,
exactly.
Yeah,
get
Hmm.
back to rent, get back to grocery prices, get back to
exactly.
humane
Hmm.
immigration.
Because
Like,
that does a couple things. It stops the feeding frenzy of the media from latching on to those buzzwords, and it keeps a lot of well, I mean, the second one doesn't matter as much. It keeps those more fringe leftists from going, oh, well, he's not a real this and that because
right,
he's
Hmm.
something electoralism, and therefore Democrats and blah blah blah. It's just like, yeah, you don't
Hmm.
want to feed those fools. I've dealt with my fair share of them. It's just like the anti-electoralist types. Just I'm done. No, at this point, if you operate within politics and your modus operandi is not harm reduction, I don't want to hear from you.
Hmm.
It's you have to work within the system to able to like bend the system to your will. It's like you can't operate without outside the system, but electoralism, especially on a local scale, matters a whole lot. Look no further than the goddamn New York mayoral race.
Hmm.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, great
yeah. I
point.
would say one thing to run with, Mike, if you want to ever use it, just because I don't know if you ever heard of the old storytelling lesson, generality is the death of art. So specificity is kind of the key to great storytelling.
Hmm.
I think that's also the case with analytics and labels.
Hmm.
So it's not just capitalism that's the problem, right? It is capitalism, but the specific form of capitalism that now exists in America is very different from what it was before 1980, 82. Really was when they started allowing stock buybacks and things got really, really bad. But
Hmm.
since the 80s, at the very least,
Yeah.
at the very latest. And so, what you could say, when you do the capitalism critique, I have a question, a more fun question for you after this, but I would just suggest I use baby boomer conservative capitalism, BBCC, because that way you can put the blame in all the right places. It's not just conservatism. It's not just conservative capitalism. It's baby boomer conservative capitalism. Ever since they became the biggest voting bloc, we've been on this train.
Hmm.
The other thing, because Wes, that the fun question that I have for you though is, are you worn out at all by your uh, criticisms of the right? Because I've kind of like taken
Mm.
a break for a couple of months and haven't done any essays, and it's been kind of nice. Like I'm still doing writing a lot, but it's the 80-20 principle, right? Like the first 80% of the video is takes just as much time to complete as the last 20%. So I've just been dragging my feet on a few essays, and I'm watching your stuff, and I'm like, man, how does he keep going in there and just laying the wood on these conservatives every fucking day? Like, don't you get tired? Like, it just makes me sick to watch something like Laura Loomer and all these right wing personalities like Charlie Kirk, and I'm just like, oh god, it's like these people are bringing out the worst in me, but you seem to cope with it pretty well.
I mean, honestly, hating these people is like my driving life force at this
Yeah,
point. If there's 1,000 different ways, 1,000,000 different ways, an infinity number of ways to say fuck you to these people, I'm gonna find every single one of them because they're
Yeah.
just so like demonstrably evil that I
Hmm.
feel like I even if I've said the same thing 100 times, I have to say it 100 more times because there's just nothing comparable to these people aside from the Nazis. So like
right.
dealing with the modern day Nazi movement is something that like I will never let become normalized. So like I will grant you there are times when it's extremely draining to just see more racism, more
Right.
Islamophobia, like explicit transphobia, homophobia, just like all the phobias and isms. It's super draining, but at the same time, it's like I'm not gonna allow that shit to be even more normalized. I'm at least gonna like put a stop at the individual level, because it's easy to get demoralized because like an example I use today is that like these people are like they're like black holes. Like their stupidity, their hate's like a black
Yeah.
hole where it like consumes everything around it and it sucks
Yes.
away all of your patience and
Yeah.
energy and it just leaves
Bingo.
you feeling powerless in its enormity. And you
Yep.
have to, even though it feels impossible and you're just like farting in the wind, you have to do your best to just like still make a dent because if you don't, then they win and they kind of already have won. But I'm like, if I'm gonna go down, like I'm gonna go down kicking and screaming because like these people are so stupid and so evil that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
every opportunity, like every single little comment where you say "fuck you, Marjorie" or whatever, or Trump on Twitter,
Hmm.
that all counts, all of it. Even if it's insignificant, because these people need to be reminded every single day for the rest of their lives that they are genuinely pieces of shit, and most normal people hate them. So that's kind of like
Yeah.
what's driving me. I'm being fueled almost exclusively by hate at this point, and I have no problem admitting that.
That's
I
great. No,
totally
but
get it. Yeah.
that's something. It's like I describe myself coming from the conservative upbringing that I did as being like, if I were a Star Wars character, I'd be someone that was like born a Sith of the dark side, and then crossed over to the light, became a Jedi, and now the whole country's in the dark side. So like this is all familiar
Mm,
territory for me.
Yeah.
But you become like a Jedi because you were born. I mean, I don't know what your upbringing was exactly, but you were born
evangelical,
on the
actually. So I was on the dark
okay. So
side,
you were
baby.
born. So
Oh
you were
yeah.
born on the
We'll
dark
probably get
side. So
into
you're
that.
kind of like me. You're kind of like this kind of character too, where you were
Mm-hmm.
born on the dark side, crossed over, became a Jedi, and now the whole world is in the dark side. And yeah, I mean, there's something that's useful about hatred and being okay with like, it's I hate bullies, right? Because
Yeah.
bullies are evil. There's nothing. How many movies and TV shows have you seen where the biggest moment in the story is where the nerdy, weak little kid stands up to the schoolyard bully and knocks him on his ass? And the
Mm-hmm.
audience is just like, yeah, it's like winning
Right.
it's like winning a buzzer beater in a basketball game. It's like,
We
yeah,
need
we
that.
won.
We need that
Mm-hmm.
politics right now. That's kind of
Yeah.
like we go back and
Yeah.
forth about. It's like where's that at? Like, come on. But like,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's
it's just
saying like
like
calling the go ahead.
sort of
Go ahead, Stepan.
persisting out of spite really is like what grounds at least me because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
like the past 6 months has just been so exhausted. Like the first two, I was beside myself. I didn't know I'm losing my goddamn motherfucking mind over here. But like it to the point where like I deactivated my Twitter because like of course Elon's a fucking Nazi. I don't want to fucking like interact with this shit. But it's also at the same time it's Twitter. That's where everybody still is.
Right.
But I had it deactivated for the longest time. Reactivate. Turns out it fucking vanished. It disappeared. So I ended up having to make a new one. But my issue with it at the time was my algorithm was so plagued with all these dumb fuck conservative accounts that were just all up in my for you page, the for
Yeah.
you tab, where it was just endless, and it was just maddening because like I couldn't deal with just such an endless onslaught of stupidity and wrongness and hatred and just vile bigotry day in and day out. And so it's just like I need to step the fuck away from this. But now that I have a new
Yeah.
account, I'm able to actually like mold the algorithm to my liking and whatnot. But like if anything, like what I have tried to teach myself to do is not to get so wrapped up in how stupid and evil these people are, because like obviously like that's the case at this point. Like it's
Hmm.
like that's like the bar, the standard is, so it's like have fun with it. Like okay, they're stupid, so like like have a little bit more fun with it in your interactions with them if you do your retweets and comments and shit like that, because it's like it doesn't matter, like they're still going to be there, they're still going to be spouting bullshit. So like I
But I'm
can't
still not
I
hearing anybody. I'm still not hearing. Hold on one second, step back, because I'm still not hearing
Mhm.
anybody on the left get aggressive and calling them stupid, stubborn, and sociopathic. I'm not hearing anyone call them idiots, bullies, and cowards. I'm not hearing anyone call them Confederate
Mm,
Christian nationalists. Where's the
right,
creativity? That's what we have on the left that the right doesn't. That could be
Hmm.
our
right.
secret weapon. That's what we talk about with political marketing. That's what I'm talking about when I get nervous around the word radical, because it's just like it. Except I didn't write the rules, but I know what they are. And it's like the rules that some rules are stronger than others. And the rules that we can break through right now are the politics of civility and the politics of
Hmm.
kindness and the politics of universal love. No, you want universal health care, you better get rid of those predispositions because those are
Hmm.
what have held us back. Call stupid stupid. People will respect you. Call the bully, like that's I feel like what my
Yeah.
superpower, my value is trying to teach people how to talk shit to the bully.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And your Star
Yeah.
Wars point was great as well, dude. There's like I mean, yeah, like the dark side being driven by hate. It's like eh, if you saw Revenge of the Sith, like would Anakin Skywalker have gone down that path of hatred if he didn't love Padme? You know, so it like
Hmm.
finding that balance, because like you can be driven by hate. Like it's easy, it's so easy to hate all these fascists on the right, but it's because you love the people on the left, the people that you
Right.
care for, the people that you want to protect. I
Hmm.
have a lot of friends who are scared because of these ICE raids, and they feel like they're vulnerable. They're scared that the of the recent DOJ memo that wanted to like focus more on denaturalization, the alligator Alcatraz kind of thing, and so it's like what. Like how do I reassure these close friends of mine? How do I tell them like, oh yeah, you're I mean, do I just say like your fears are unfounded? You don't have to like worry about this. It's like like the mindset is everything. And
Hmm.
these are friends that aren't exactly like politically engaged. They're not like us. They're not like following leftist media and in the news of the day, 24/7. So it's hard to find the right kind of reassurances that would be like, well, I mean, unless there are direct sources with like verification and confirmation on claims being made, like just you guys just need to take everything you see with a grain of salt, because there is a lot of bullshit out there, because like ultimately this administration wants you scared, they want you buying into like uncertainty and unfounded claims. It because things are hyperbolic and over sensationalized, and like I have learned that like maybe it's best to see where exactly are a lot of these claims coming from. Check my sources. Is this being
Mhm.
exaggerated by various TikToks or reels or whatever? And find a little bit of solace in the fact that like maybe things in certain regards aren't as bad as it's being made out to be, and the fact that like it's only being made that way because sensationalism and hyperbole gets clicks, it gets reshares, it gets retweets, and
Yeah.
that's how people make money. But that
Mhm.
isn't to say or
It's
dismiss like the overbearing fascism that's bearing down on upon us with this goddamn regime currently. So yeah,
Mhm. Yeah, it's overwhelming for regular people who don't necessarily follow it. I've had people like in my life as
yes,
well reach out, especially after the big beautiful bill passed. One of my family members has epilepsy. Another has stage 3 kidney failure or kidney disease, I think is the thing.
hmm
Both on Medicaid, and just wondering, hey, what's going to happen? My medication is $1,600. What does this mean? And trying to comfort them, but also saying, I don't know. I don't know what this means. We don't necessarily know how many people are going to be impacted. In Oregon, it's going to be like 200,000. So it's tough. All of this, like what you're explaining, Stat, is very, very overwhelming. It's
yeah,
overwhelming for us. So, like for normal people, and like
mm,
normal people meaning like people who don't follow it as closely as we do, to the point where you have brain rot. It's
yes,
it's also overwhelming. So, like what I'm kind of struggling with is finding the right balance, like how to condense it all to
correct.
make it more easily digestible, because it's really tough. And part of it is like, man, how do I want to describe it? It's like, when you got to give your dog a pill and you hide it in cheese or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah,
kind of doing that in a political sense, right? So
Yes.
where things are bad, but you've got to hide like the solutions a little bit, hide your power level as well. Like like I don't know how to communicate the fact that like we might not be able to get out of this situation by normal electoral means, assuming we have free and fair elections going forward and a Democrat is able to
Right.
take power after
That's
winning.
what I'm worried about. Yep.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
I think that people haven't really come to terms with the fact that we don't need like another like a Bernie Sanders type. We actually need a Hugo Chavez in America who's gonna
Yeah.
yeah,
capitalize on the immunity and the ability to override the Constitution
yes,
that the Supreme Court granted to presidents. Like we have to
yes,
break democracy and the rules to fix it long term. So like
But you still
there
got
can
to
be
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say there can't be no more like um tone policing or fears about the
Right.
parliamentarian or norms. Like you have to deliver by all means necessary, and if that means violating the Constitution, that ship has already sailed. As long as you're doing
yeah,
something for good people, that's what you have to do. Like if we're gonna live in a dictatorship, which I don't want to, but if that's where
hmm
we're going, I'd prefer it to be a good one and not a bad one. So somebody who's gonna get in
right.
and actually like deliver for the people
No kidding.
forcefully, that may be what has to happen. Like a Democrat that has to get in and twist arms and actually jails political opponents. Um,
Yes,
that's kind of
Yeah.
unfortunately where we're headed, and it's
I
hard to
think
yeah.
communicate that because that's not a message that is going to resonate with regular
The
people. It
genie
scares
is not
them.
go- yeah, the
with a
genie
lot of
is not going
lefties,
back in the bottle.
a lot of lefties don't like the sound of what you're saying, but it is
No,
true that we
no.
need
Like,
a lot
yeah, we have to
it is
face the
true
reality
from
at this
like
point.
I hope I'm
from
wrong, but you know,
Yeah, and it
from
also
practical
depends, like
go
like
ahead,
it,
step up.
it depends on how much the Supreme Court holds back any future administrations as well, because literally
mm,
everything seems to be rigged in favor of Trump and Trumpism. But I mean, we'll see.
yeah.
Maybe, maybe like the backlash is so bad because of how bad this bill is that it's just a clean sweep for the Democrats the next couple elections. It stays that way. Yeah.
It's going to take 20 years to recover from all of this, though, and that's going to mean successive presidents getting leftier and leftier over time. But the ends justify the means comes up when you're talking like that. It's a war is just the
Mhm.
basic thing I say in one of my decrees. And someone goes to war with you, what choice do you have? You have to go to war with them. What are you gonna
Right.
do? You're gonna sit there. You're gonna bend the knee right away and be like, oh no, okay, you can have my land, you can have my property, you can have my, means of production, whatever you want to say. Um, but I think that the always I think we're all in agreement about the what we want but the how we want is really comes down to people.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what I keep looking for. And I'm really excited about Kat Abagzalia up
Hmm.
in Illinois. She
Oh yeah.
seems really cool, and I think she's gonna knock on wood, she'll win.
Hmm.
But it's gonna take, like you guys are saying, 2 or 3 election cycles to really get that power. I don't think the next president's gonna be a progressive. I think it's probably gonna be like Wes Moore out of Maryland, or maybe I don't know who the next president's gonna be. I know it's not gonna be Gavin Newsom though. He's not gonna get through the
Hmm.
primaries. No way. No
Yeah,
way.
I feel like it'll
I don't
be
know.
somebody that we hate, like Pete Buttigieg or something. But I'm overly cynical. Maybe that won't be the case. But I just like, I don't know. I've been burned by how we've all been burned by how many primaries so far. So like, if we come out of this and it's Pete Buttigieg, um, I won't be
I'm
surprised. I
more
will be pissed, but I
I'm
won't
more
be
I
surprised.
I would be even more like I wouldn't be surprised if it's fucking Gavin Newsom on like
You
and like
wouldn't.
us.
You don't think
Oh,
he'd have problems in the primary?
I mean, I think he might be like the establishment's fucking favorite. Honestly, he's it's like pretty much like in a certainty that he's going to be running for president in 2028.
Yes, but I don't think he'll get the nomination. I don't think he'll get the anyway.
I hope not. But yeah,
Anyway, I wanted to I don't want to get caught up in like 2028 actually. Like if you guys don't mind, because that's like something that the
of
horse race
course,
stuff is
of course.
fun, but I don't want to I wanted to get in, if you don't mind sticking around for a few more minutes, Mike. We'll go for maybe
Yeah.
another 10, 20 minutes, something like that. These are my basic political questions for friends and family to figure out what you're dealing with. This is part of my advocacy that I'm coming up with in an essay of stop trying to reason with overgrown children, which psychologically speaking, that is what conservatives are. They are
Hmm.
underdeveloped human beings. They do not have a capacity for empathy.
Mhm.
Children are understandably narcissistic because they cannot survive without the help of adults. And they just never transcended that. They never grew up. So, I suggest that people just tell people to shut up if they find out that they're conservative. Like, I don't want to hear your politics. If you want to talk politics, we can go into it as me teaching you things, but that's the only kind of conversation I'm interested in having with you. And
Hmm.
then similarly on a political level, in terms of political figures, it's I'm talking past you now. I'm not
Yeah.
talking to you. I'm trying to expose you as the problem, right? Reagan said government is the problem. Well, somebody needs to step up and say, no, baby boomer conservative capitalism is the problem, right? And it's really,
Mhm.
if you want to shorten that to just the baby boomers, you can, because the baby boomer conservatives are sociopaths and the baby boomer liberals are losers, as I say in one of my essays.
Weak.
But
Yeah.
getting
Oh yeah.
into I think the easiest way, one of the first questions that I would ask people is, do you believe America is a meritocracy? And you would be
Mm.
surprised as to how many people, especially if they're white, say that it is to this
Wow.
day.
Right.
Oh yep, they still think it's a fucking meritocracy.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think an easy one now, the one that I say, so something that Stat Pat was referring to earlier was, I think I've told you this. Star Wars is politics, Star
Hmm.
Trek is policy, and Jurassic Park is political marketing because you got to kill dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs that we got to kill are
I like
Reagan and
that.
Clinton. So
Hmm.
a good way to figure out what you're dealing with if you're having a political conversation with someone is figure out, like, do you think Bill Clinton was a good president? And if they say yes, then you have to say, well, do you want to know why that's not true? Or do you want to know why you're wrong? And you do the same thing with Reagan, because if they haven't done their homework enough to realize that, according to history, they were miserable presidents, both of them, then we really can't have the Reformation on baby boomer intellectualism, which is defined by Reagan in 1980 to now. Um, then that we need. I mean, we need to cleanse. Like, I hate to use fascistic like language, but we really do need to like cleanse the nation of conservatism. It is a fucking
Yeah.
disease, and I
Yeah.
describe it as a cancer. I describe it as a cancer that you can't cut out. You have to use radiation to deal with it, right? There's a lot of
Hmm.
cancers that you just can't get rid of by cutting out. You have to use radiation. And like in the end zones, I know you don't watch football, but in the end zones for the NFL this last season, it said end racism. It takes all of us. And I'm like, Wow, I wish we lived in a world where we could end racism. I wish we could kill racism. It's not going to
Mhm.
happen. There's always going to be somewhere between 5 and 15, as you know, right now it's probably like 20% of the country that are just straight up racists, that are
Mhm.
just never going to get past their it's generational. I went to school in the South, dude. Like it's generational. You grew up in like with the evangelical culture. I'm sure that was kind of generational in your family on that branch.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, to a
So
degree, it was. Yeah.
Anyway, that's just a couple of my questions. One of the things, oh, do you think competition is always good for American society? You'd be surprised as to how many people say yes to that. Um, and I don't know. These aren't really that actually amazing questions. Go ahead, Steph. You got
I
something
got.
good?
Well,
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
when it comes to
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask next. Go ahead. You got it.
well, you can actually go first because like
Oh, okay.
my question is going to like lead to a whole evolution of a whole ass topic. So go ahead.
No, this was just a political marketing thing that I wanted to make sure I mentioned to Mike so he can maybe take it with him if he wants. But
Mhm.
the difference between liberal and progressive, I think, is important. Just like I was alluding to the difference between history and public memory. But the difference between liberal and progressive is a very nefarious subject because it can go in a lot of different directions. And remember, just when in doubt, simplify. Liberal is incremental change or neoliberal is incremental change and progressive is structural change, right? Like let's all just agree on that, and then we can get back to kind of the basic problems and solutions that we're facing. But go ahead, Step. What did you have?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about how your event like being raised evangelical, Mike, how that shaped your early idea of politics and how that evolved over time and led you to where you are now, or at least led you to where you were when you first started your channel.
Yeah, I think that being raised evangelical kind of validates this idea that you can basically win over anybody with the right policies and with a working class message because my dad was like very fundamentalist, my mom was too. And the rest of the family is, but my dad was never necessarily like exclusively Republican.
Hmm.
He was, I think the best way you can describe him would be as a Christian Democrat. It's not common in the US, but in Europe, there's a lot of Christian Democrat parties where they are conservative socially, but they're more liberal economically. And that's basically what my dad was. So he hated Clinton because my family was poor as shit. And
Based.
when Bill Clinton signed welfare reform into law, my dad got hit by that and he was pissed.
Hmm.
Huge supporters of George W. Bush because of the
Yeah.
Christianity, opposition to abortion, social issues, gay marriage.
Mhm.
But then my dad saw that George W. Bush got in and cut his own taxes and the taxes of his friends, and he was outraged. There was also the Iraq War. But then my dad
Right.
flipped back to Obama, believed in change, and then flipped away from Obama, but then hated Donald Trump because of the anti-immigrant rhetoric and also the tax cuts for the rich. So it's one of those things
Um,
where like the through line was always like there was this anti-establishment fervor with my dad who was working class, always got fucked over. When he finally created his own business, he got disabled and lost everything. So just constantly getting fucked by the system, not a sufficient safety net. And the one thing that always appealed to him was this message of economic security, being able to feed your family, having healthcare, stability.
yeah.
And you know, that was always like the lowest common denominator. And if somebody like my dad, who was very much a political normie, didn't like he was a political person, but did not know shit about politics. I don't know if that makes sense, but like he
No,
he
right.
liked to talk he liked to talk shit, but didn't really have the
Know what he's
stats to
talking
back
about.
it up. Yeah,
Yeah, sounds like a
exactly.
conservative,
Yeah.
dude. It's
Yeah.
superficial
Right.
reasoning. It's
Right.
they use all the superficial like arguments, the talking points that they get from Fox News, the distraction tactics. Usually, it's just a non sequitur. Like it's the art of
Hmm.
distraction. That's what
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like. It's the right wing magic trick where They're like, oh, America's the best. We never do anything wrong, except for, of course, the government, which we hate. But then we expect the government to save our ass in a natural disaster or go to
Mm-hmm.
war and kick ass. And it's not a coincidence that the
Yeah.
military is the best fucking finance part of our government. Like,
No,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ. Like, these
Yeah.
people don't do any thinking for themselves. They just copy and paste what they hear.
And this is like
Mm-hmm.
this is an issue that's just been like long lasting when it comes to I mean the left on its own, but also even the Democratic Party. They're
Mm-hmm.
not as tuned into or they don't utilize the messaging of economics as often as they should
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to economic policy or the current state of the economy, when it comes to investment and starting businesses and the best practices here and that. A lot of that you hear is from the fucking right. Like so people who aren't as like into politics but follow economics really closely, a lot of those are going to come from sources that are relatively right wing because obviously the right wing, they serve capitalism, and its current
Mm-hmm.
system of economics, it's capitalism. And so I think the left and the Democrats could they could uh go really far when it comes to incorporating economics a lot more into their messaging,
Mm-hmm.
even if it means um, utilizing a lot of capitalist messaging uh, in their rhetoric and whatnot.
When I
Eh,
say when I use I told the lefties, I said when I use capitalist terms, it's just because of my training. And like marketing just means messaging. It just means
mhm,
communication. It just means the presentation of a value proposition. Branding just means reputation. What's the DSA's reputation? I want the DSA's reputation to be the spearhead of the anti-MAGA movement. Now, somebody in the DSA is going to be like, well, we as an organization should be about what we stand for, not what we stand against. Yes, but if
yeah,
you don't win, then
Mm-hmm.
you none of your ideas matter. So actually, the 1-2 punch that we're talking about here with what we stand against and what we stand for starts with what we stand against. Unfortunately, there it
Mm-hmm.
is, the left needing to come to terms with the best strategic vision. It's not just like you guys talked earlier about the creative vision.
mhm,
What's the world that we want to live in? Employment, housing, education, healthcare. It's not complicated. But then I always obsess over how are we going to accumulate power. And that conversation for people who know politics like we do is okay, Democratic Party primaries. But for people like your dad or just these other superficial conservatives, they don't even
Mm-hmm.
understand the primary structure. They don't even understand the
Mm-hmm.
internal politics of the left.
yeah.
But whereas we understand the internal politics of the right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a matter of everyone doing their goddamn homework. I mean, I
No,
really
Well,
feel
yeah,
and
like
that's the
America's
thing is they're not going to do their homework, and that's one thing
right,
that I've had to come to terms with, especially after this last election, is that you will never get Americans to do research before an election. So you
right.
have to do
no, of
everything in your
course.
power to market your politics in the most normie friendly package imaginable. Because like thinking about my dad's politics. If he was still alive today, he would have been enthusiastic about Zoran Mamdani. Like over time, he definitely gravitated much more left leaning. He was very pro Bernie Sanders before he died. But like the idea that like he was always teetering on the edge of like evangelicism and like liberalism, it's always comes back to the working class message. Like if you have, you don't even have to talk about the isms or the ideology. If you
Hmm.
just say, hey, should everybody have health care? Do you want your rent to be cheaper?
Right,
That hits with anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. So like this
right.
Right.
idea of like that we often hear from Democrats of limiting the parameters of what you should say, free this, free that. No, that's good because when you say something is free, even though Republicans try to give that negative connotations, it hits hard with regular people because yes, healthcare should be free at the point of service. That's not actually controversial if you talk to regular people. You can like this is how dumb people are that we're dealing with. You could ask them, "Hey, do you support Medicare for all?" they would say, no, I don't. But then if you ask them, do you think healthcare should be free at the point of service? They'd be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Like it reminds me of this Jimmy Kimmel segment where they were talking to people about like, hey, which do you prefer, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare? And they'd be like, oh, the Affordable Care Act, hands down. Like people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So you have
Right.
to do everything in your power to jam the message of socialism down their throats, but like doing the cheese and pill tactic, right? Like get them to eat their vegetables by like putting chocolate over the fucking broccoli. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like you
exactly.
can't.
Right.
You got to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
your
yeah.
best to hide your power level and like break it down in the most simplest terms imaginable that a fifth grader can understand it, a kindergartner can understand it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, as shitty as he is, James Carville had it right, and he continues to have it right when like he urges to the Democrats, it's the economy, stupid. It's the kitchen table issues. Like that messaging goes a long way.
Yeah,
It,
but the
it,
Democratic establishment, I can tell you how the Democratic establishment, like Hakeem Jeffries, would respond to that. He would say we have talked about those things, but they always talk about them in the opposite way that Mike just described. They always
Mhm.
talk about it in overly complex ways and like tax credit this,
Yeah, exactly.
subsidy that. It's not no universal health care. Like we're doing
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
New Deal again, and it's going to be called the next deal because in 20 years we're probably going to have another deal where we restructure our society. It's called social evolution. It's called
Yeah.
societal growth, and
Yeah.
it's not always fun. In
No.
fact,
If you ever been like,
more often than not, it's painful.
no, you're absolutely right. No, if you've ever been in sales, one thing that they'll tell you is that the customer is more likely to buy something if you put the product in their fucking hand, right? And that's
Right.
one thing that Democrats have got to do is they can't just say, okay, if you qualify, you can apply for a tax credit at the end of the year. You need to put it in their hands. Like you can't pass some policy that doesn't take effect until a couple of years. And like this is kind of what the abundance guys touched on a little bit as well. Like that's one element that like makes sense, of course, because Republicans kind of time their policies in a way to have maximum impact when they can like distance themselves from it. Like a lot of the provisions in the big beautiful bill don't take effect until 2028, which is when Democrats could potentially take power again, assuming we have free and fair elections. But like
Right.
it's not the problem with the Democrats is that if you listen to Hakeem Jeffries, he'll talk about the cost of living and affordability, but there's no actual concrete follow up on that. It's not.
No.
It's
Right.
like, hey, I get that things are expensive. I hear you, and sure, that's validating. Thank you for patting me on the head. But like, what specifically are you going to do?
Right. What's
And
the action plan?
the solutions aren't acceptable to them because any solution that they have would conflict with their donors. Medicare
Right.
for all, their health insurance industry donors would not appreciate that.
Yeah.
Property managers that donate to them and donate to Democratic Party super PACs
Rent
wouldn't
freeze,
appreciate
yeah.
them saying rent freeze. Yeah, so like you have to come with the solutions, and that's what Zoran Mamdani did. He crafted his entire campaign around what people specifically wanted. He talked to them, hey, what's the biggest issue? And they said affordability. So he made his whole campaign around that. Like that's what Democrats have to do. But rather than doing that, they'll listen to what people want and then find ways to like use verbiage to drive them away from that onto some dumbass bullshit that they want to support. Like, some incrementalist approach to healthcare, not even a public option anymore, but instead additional tax credits or subsidies for the Affordable
Right.
Care Act.
Oh
It,
my
it just
God.
it's such a clusterfuck, and that's why they're not resonating with the base, and they're not resonating with regular voters. When you look at Donald Trump, though, like it's just very in your face. We're going to do mass deportations. It's no, hey,
Right.
we're going to utilize our executive powers to accelerate, deport. Like he's just cutting straight through the bullshit, talking to people at a first grade level, and like you really have to dumb it down, and that's why he's successful in part because we live in idiocracy and hell, and
Yeah.
Democrats have to do the same thing. And it might sound condescending, but you kind of have to be condescending because in this era of fascism, when fascists are kind of winning, or they are winning, definitely, you can't afford to like tiptoe around things. You have to be direct and just say, hey, they're killing you, they're gonna die. But when I say direct, it's kind of a contradiction because I also talk about like hiding the ball and hiding the power level a little bit. But like you just need to reach voters in a very direct way, and Democrats are struggling with that, whereas individuals like Zoran, AOC, Bernie, they're not struggling because again, they're tapping into an anger and specifically saying these are the reasons why you're hurting. It's not trans people or immigrants. It's billionaires. It's capitalism, and it's an oversimplified message. But you have to oversimplify it. And once you plant that seed, then you have an in with them.
Sure.
You're not just gonna like win over voters by saying, "Hey, comrades, let's seize the means of production and abolish capitalism."
Exactly.
You have to frame it in better terms, more terms that appeal to normies. You can't if you're a Democrat
Exactly.
who's an elected, you can't just say, oh, I believe in all Americans having access to healthcare. No, you have to say you're going to get healthcare. Period. It's just like
Yes.
tweaking it.
Yes.
I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but you know what I mean. Like you just have we need to get better. And
Yeah,
Well, I-
that's exactly it. Yeah. So, go ahead, Dieter.
No, I'm just gonna say. I mean, the list of FDR's second Bill of Rights is what I always use as a concrete thing. I know FDR had a lot of
Mhm.
problems. And he wasn't a perfect president. The Okinawan internment camps being the most embarrassing thing that he ever did, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like healthcare, education, housing, employment, farmers' rights, social security. Once we get all
Yeah.
those taken care of, then we can argue about the isms, right?
Mhm.
Like I think that's the way that and everyone's rhetorical demand is going to be different because the districts are different, but yeah, he's done a masterful job of being like, I respect that question even though I don't really respect the question. I'm going to talk about what I want way because this is what like the way he handled the Israel bullshit was masterful.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, for me, I would have been like, that question comes from APAC having so much power in America, and I resent the fuck out of you asking it, but let me go ahead and answer it anyway. See, I'm going to handle it differently. Like, I'm not going to be sad, and we should I'll let you take us home, Stat Pat. But I advocated for it on this space, and they made a short of it, but WTF doesn't stand for what you think it does anymore. It stands for white trash fascism. That's what this is. And until somebody calls it white trash fascism, it's going to have a chance of coming back. It needs to be socially marginalized. Like I'll know when we've won when I see Boston, New York, Philly, Chicago, DC, Baltimore, LA, San Francisco, Portland, there's no MAGA in gear in those cities because people know that if they show up wearing MAGA paraphernalia in any of those cities, they're not going to get served at bars, restaurants, and clubs. They're not going to be welcome in public spaces for events. And, they're just not going to be welcome there. That's how I need the left to act and why. I mean, it's kind of like I'll finish with this dichotomy because I brought it up when I was working with Pastor Ben Dixon on this space. The difference between revenge and retribution, where revenge is the sense of personal satisfaction that comes from you hurting someone that hurt you. And it's usually disproportional, right? I'm not just going to hurt them like they hurt me. I'm going to hurt them 10 times worse. That's revenge. Retribution is justice. Retribution is a social punishment or other kinds of punishment or whatever compensation to the victims from the person who wronged them that is deemed appropriate by society. So that's my current challenge, is to balance like my utter hatred and thirst for revenge on this culture that not just ruined the country but kind of ruined my family, and wanting to make a better America, because I don't want the people who are like regretful Trump voters thinking that they're just going to come into, and this is something you've talked about in one of your videos, Mike, coming into the Democratic Party and expecting the Democratic Party to cater to them. Like, no, you're coming into this party to listen and learn because there's something wrong with you. Like, you're on your way to dealing with it, but you still haven't dealt with it yet. What was in you that made you think it was a good idea to vote for Trump? And maybe not once, maybe not twice, maybe 3 times. Like, you got to look in the mirror. And then when you come to a DSA meeting, don't really talk for a few months. Like, just listen and do research because you're not educated if you think that Donald Trump had any business becoming president of the United States.
Yeah, no, I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. Absolutely. Yeah, I want revenge 1,000%. These people destroyed the fucking country. It's not like we
Yeah.
weren't already like on this trajectory, but they accelerated it. And there needs to be like we need to have Nuremberg tribunals after this is what I
Yes.
one
Yeah.
way I think we can
No,
get justice. You know,
I want Stephen
re-education.
Miller in jail. I want Stephen Miller
Yeah.
in jail. I mean, he's evil.
Yeah.
He needs to go.
Hmm.
He's
Big
Goebbels.
big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it came to like the origin of your channel, Mike, what was like the catalyst? What were the jumping off points for you to where it was like, I am going to create a channel. I'm going to start uh, covering politics like regularly.
Hmm. Um, it was kind of not a serious idea for me for a very long time. I was trying to get just a little bit of public speaking experience. I was more of a writer, never a really good speaker at all. I still have issues, but I think I've improved. But you know, it's always something
Yeah.
you can work on.
Of
Um,
course.
but I was gonna start teaching a course at college, and I was like, I kind of need to learn how to talk, and also I really needed a political outlet because I felt like I had so many ideas and a unique perspective, and I thought it'd be really cool to like have some kind of a platform. I don't know how serious I'm gonna take it,
Right.
and I didn't
Same
take it
here.
super serious for the first year, but yeah, it kind of was something that uh, took off on its own. I was really lucky to start when I did, honestly. I feel very
Right.
fortunate because a lot of people don't have that luxury these days. It's very, very difficult to find your footing on YouTube. Um,
Yes.
but, you know, in that first week, I posted videos, and the Bernie Sanders video I posted blew up. And when I say blew up, it got like 300 views,
Was
which
it
was a lot, you know?
was it the one where I think it was someone on God, what was it? I think it was like CNBC or someone. A guest came on basically saying that he donated the maximum amount allowable to the Bernie Sanders campaign
Oh, yeah.
because of like how because how much he like disliked Hillary Clinton. I think that was like the first video I ever saw
Right.
of yours. You probably know what I'm talking about, but
That video actually made it to the front page of Reddit, and I privated the video.
right. Oh,
Once it got to
really?
the front, I'm like, I don't want this much fucking notoriety. Like, I'm
Oh
doing this to
no! That's
just, yeah, no, I was like freaking out. I'm like, I don't want like all eyes on me. I just kind of want to talk about politics to a relatively small group of people. So I wasn't sure if I even wanted the smoke. There are times like where I'm like, I might just delete all these videos.
that's
Because
so
it's
funny.
not, I don't know. I was never very serious about it. So when it started to take off, it was like, oh, do I really want to be on the internet? Um, like this, like, do I want my face everywhere?
That
But yeah,
Yeah,
now
that's like
I
now
mean,
it's that choice has been made, and there's no taking
the
it back.
cat's
So
out of the bag, dude. Yeah, the
yeah. I
genie's
mean,
out of the bottle on that one.
it's what got me
yeah,
started. It's what got me interested in your channel. I mean, I probably like subscribed right after that video. It's just like, yeah, Bernie, let's go.
yeah.
In terms of your political journey, because I kind of feel the same way. I started my channel in like early-ish 2020 because I've been following politics for so long. At that point, I feel like I could offer a unique perspective, and I just it's been a very slow gradual rise over the past 5 years. But what in terms of your political ideology over the past 10 years, I've basically seen you go from
Mhm.
a progressive to like, oh yeah, I'm just a out and out socialist.
Mhm.
What were some like major turning points for you in terms of your political ideology?
I think mostly it was dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party and understanding just how entrenched the donors were, and kind of connecting the dots between that and the broader economic system and
Yes.
the way it reinforces itself, not just in the United States, but around the world. And kind of little by little forming a much more anti capitalist orientation. Um, if you
Yeah.
watch the show, I almost never refer to myself as a socialist, but I'll criticize capitalism just to kind of like
Right.
hide the
Right.
powerlism. I don't know
Yeah.
honestly what I am. I think a
Right.
socialist is probably the best uh, characterization. I'm probably somewhere between socialism and communism, whereas I believe in like a moneyless society. I don't necessarily agree with the abolition of the state because I don't have a lot of faith in human beings. So I'm somewhere
Yeah.
between there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. We're
between
in the same
socialism,
boat. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
socialism, communism, somewhere around there. It doesn't really matter because
Mhm.
what I'm arguing for is nowhere near that. I'm not going to see a socialist or a communist culture in my lifetime, unfortunately. But
Right.
trying to move the needle in that direction and away from capitalism is kind of like that's where I'm at. So I think I'm anti-capitalist. That's how I describe myself because I think
Yeah.
it's a good entry point for people
Mhm.
who aren't scared necessarily because I'm not saying I'm a socialist. That's a
Mhm.
boogeyman word, but they agree that there
Right.
are reasons why capitalism has failed. So hearing me out and explaining why what we're seeing now is the logical conclusion to all capitalist systems, I feel like it's kind of helped because I remember back in like I don't know, it was like 2018, 2019. And like one of my family members was like, "Are you a socialist?" So I was talking about Bernie Sanders, and they were just so turned off by the label itself. And I'm like, okay, I need to find a way to like appeal to people who are automatically like that's a non-starter to them.
Well, you just
So
say, "Have you ever heard of Social Security?" And they say yes, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's socialism." That's usually
yeah,
what I
I
do.
think that's a
Yeah.
really clever way to do it for sure. Because if you familiarize it, that makes it better. But like trying to
Bingo.
just, I don't even care where people land, honestly, as long as it's like anti-capitalist. If you're a communist or an anarchist or a socialist, I think all of these people are my allies. Leftist, progressives as well.
Mhm.
Liberals, depending, it depends
Mhm.
on the issue, right?
Right.
But like, as long as we're anti-capitalist, that has to be a broad coalition. Uh,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what I guess I'm trying to create. I don't really know. I just like want to live in a better country. And that's not
Oh, don't
that's
we
not like
all?
Well, I
falling
have
apart
to
at the
Of
seams. And
course.
so that's what I'm trying to like. I'm
absolutely.
trying
Right.
to
Sure.
nudge people in that direction.
Yeah.
You know?
Of course. Of
I've
course.
I have to do more research, but I'm pretty sure that all these isms that we're talking about were defined before the global economy as we know it was established. Like all of
Yeah, a
these
lot has
thinkers,
changed.
a lot of these thinkers weren't aware of the global village as it has come to be today.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So
Right. Right.
the framework that they were coming into, like it's pretty funny, right? When the conservatives try to use the framers as like demigods.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say, "Oh, what would the framers do?" It's like the "What would Jesus do?" thing. It's the same propaganda, just a different context. And it's like the framers could never have conceived of the country expanding across the continent,
Mhm.
Uh
much
huh.
less a global interdependent economy defined by trains, planes, and automobiles, and the
Hmm.
internet, and internet porn. Like, I mean, they could never have conceived of the world that we live in. So
Hmm.
stop projecting onto these isms is what I would encourage people to do. The labels and get rid of those labels with all their cultural baggage and just
Yeah.
talk problems and solutions. And that's, I think,
Hmm.
what you just said is in line with my belief system too, where I don't know if I'm a progressive, I don't know if I'm a socialist, but I do know that we were on a really good track with
Hmm.
FDR and we were in the right direction, and we got steered off of that track a couple of
Mhm.
different ways at a couple of different times. And it's time for someone to assert themselves as the greatest generation since the greatest generation.
Yeah.
And since all three of us are millennials, we're all in agreement that it's going to be the millennials, right? Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
No,
baby,
and just to
here we
just
come.
to like put a pin in what you said there, I think that what we should be doing is not leading with like our label and leading with what we want for society. Like a society where people are taken care of, where you
Right.
never have to worry about sleeping on the streets, where you're not in debt. Like describe the society and then attach the isms to that however you want to afterwards. I don't give a shit. Like lead with the vision. That's basically what
Yes.
I
Mhm.
think I'm trying to do, and I think you all are doing it as well to a
Mhm.
Yeah.
really good degree.
Absolutely.
Was there ever a point in your I guess political upbringing where you weren't of the left or you didn't have um you didn't consider yourself part of the left and then somehow that changed?
Um, Probably when I wasn't super politically formed. When I
Hmm.
was a later teenager, I started to like I just supported Republicans by default because my family was conservative and evangelical at the time, so I supported that. But when I started to go to school and pay attention to the Iraq War and
Hmm.
started to learn about things, that's when I started to switch over to not necessarily a leftist or liberal, but just like anti-Republican. I think I was safe saying that I was a Democrat back then, just a Democratic Party normie who
Right.
didn't like war, still hated Hillary Clinton. I
Right.
just
Hmm.
that neoliberalism that I remember my dad talking about and how the welfare policies destroyed our family. So I was always like, as soon as I was able to really form cohesive political thoughts, or at least semi cohesive political thoughts, it was me being a progressive, like supporting Barack
Hmm.
Obama being my first vote. I was old enough to vote when he was running, and that was my number one vote. It was all about the Iraq War. I just wanted to end the Iraq War, and Hillary voted for it. For me, that was like a non-starter.
Yeah.
I was a young man who graduated into the Great Recession, and I wanted to have a future.
Yep.
So bold change was automatically something that I was opting for. So as soon as I could basically form a political opinion, I was
Right.
progressive and started to move further and further to the left as I got older, for sure.
Right. That's
Wow.
kind of like the first, like the earliest portion of my life is like that's how it was for me as well. Like the default was, oh, my family's Republican, therefore, like I like my earliest political memories, aside from watching, Obama's inaugural speech, was the 2012 election, and like
Hmm.
because my family doesn't like Obama, I was hoping Romney would win. But as time went on and the more exposure I got, like I remember someone trying to claim to me on Facebook that Obama was a Marxist, and I was like,
Yes.
"Well, I remember learning about Marxism in high school, and this guy doesn't seem like a Marxist at all. Like, what exactly are people talking about?" Um, but being exposed to Bernie and then becoming disillusioned by the Democratic establishment screwing him over, and just sitting out the 2016 election, and then I don't know what it was over time, but I kind of got a bit more okay. This is just my trajectory. More okay
Hmm.
with like, okay, well, let's see what Trump does. Let's see exactly what he's about. Give him a chance, and this and that, and like I kind of flirted with like the rising, uh, you know, conservative media at the time and how prominent that was becoming, and just the endless defending of Trump. And a lot of people don't really, if you weren't around back then, especially following politics, how a lot of that media sphere evolved from the atheism community, and then the Gamergate community,
Right.
and then it just all kind of like coalesced together, and like it split off eventually. But a lot of it was like based in skepticism, and then there was like a big falling out. But what ended up happening was, because I was following all those atheist channels and those skeptic community channels, it got to a point to where I noticed a lot of these channels ended up just defending Trump and Trumpism
Hmm.
without question. And when it came around to the 2018 midterms, especially, I noticed a lot of these skeptics or these anti SJW channels were not being honest in their coverage at all, especially when it came to the rise of AOC. And
Hmm.
they were not covering her honestly at all. They were not representing her ideas honestly, like whatsoever. So it's like, well, what the hell? Like, if you guys call yourself skeptics, but you're not being honest about this. But the thing that really did it for me, where it was like, okay, I can't deal with anything Trump related with anymore, was his pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Mm. Yeah.
And just like we see today the consequences of such a disastrous decision. It was around that time where I got introduced to Kyle Kalinske, because at that point I was watching, Sargon of a God. I don't know if you remember that guy,
I do remember
but
him.
like
Yeah.
that dumb fucking piece of shit. But Kyle Kalinske was really like the guy that drove me from being like a centrist to being like of the left, being a progressive, and then it was
Mhm.
eventually like various breadtube channels, ContraPoints, Philosophy Tube, some more news, Vosh especially, that made me a full throated socialist. So like it can happen. Like if
Mhm.
enough if enough uh influence is there, like you can end up like me. Like you get dragged back to the left because of just the idiocy of the right wing. So
What I think one thing that I think is encouraging to like try to be a
Mhm.
little bit more hopeful is that if you are naturally an empathetic, caring person, you're gonna probably find your way back to the left. Maybe you get led
Bingo.
astray because something bad happens. Like there's this meme about like divorced dads online that like grow bitter because their family left
Yeah,
them and their children don't want anything to do with them, so they become
really
conservatives.
though.
Like you can go through a time in your life where you kind of like you stray off the path. Maybe you're a young man. Like we talk about young men and male loneliness.
Hmm.
You can't get a girlfriend,
Yes.
so you start to fall victim to these predatory men on YouTube, Andrew Tate and whatnot. But I think that like at the end of the day, and this is kind of like an evangelical meme about how Jesus will always like he'll bring you back to the flock, even if he has to break your legs and carry you. I feel like if you're an empathetic person, you will naturally find your way back to the left because
Yes.
the right is just, especially nowadays, they're so mask off or hood off, I should say,
Yeah.
to where you
Yeah.
can't feel good. You've got to know that like what they're selling
No,
is
really though.
vile. So I think that like
Yeah.
if you're a good person, you're gonna find your way back. But unfortunately, not everybody is a good
Completely agree.
person. Some of them are shit people. Some of
No.
them are evil. So yeah, that's why I think like for you it was inevitable. You just needed like some folks to guide you in the right
Right.
direction.
No, exactly. Because like at the time, it was like, okay, I can't be fully on board with like, wow, these anti-Jew and these racist jokes that are a bit too prominent in these circles. It's just like you guys are just cruel for the sake of being cruel. So
Yeah,
like the empathy definitely was always there. But when it comes to like MAGA and like these far right figures, it's just like you're such miserable fucking people. I can't
they
imagine
are.
like how it would be to be so soulless and just like hate people you don't even know for no goddamn reason at all. So like yeah,
Yeah.
it was inevitable because I do consider myself that kind of person. But like there are definitely people that are too far gone for damn
Oh yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
parting thoughts, Mike? You want to take us home here? I think we should probably wrap it up.
No, just I appreciate you all bringing me on. Really
Of
appreciate
course.
what you're doing and the unique flavor that you both bring to politics. I love, love, love the energy. I'm on the same level right now. Just like fuck it, burn it all down, breathe fire, call them white trash, call them pieces of
Yep.
shit. I think that the whole niceties, the whole what was it that Michelle Obama said?
When they
When
go
they
low,
go
we
low,
stay
we
high.
go. That
No,
makes
when
me
they
want to kill
go no,
myself.
I'm
No.
replace no, dude. Here it is. Ready?
Yeah.
When they go low, you kick them in the teeth.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
when they're
Yeah.
and then when they're and then
Exactly.
when they're hanging and when they're hanging on a ledge and they're saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Please save me." You step on their fucking foot.
Exactly. Exactly. We've got to be
Yeah.
ruthless because being
It's a war.
nice and
It's a
observing
war.
norms has not helped. It's a war. Yeah. No, that perfectly said. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have no disagreements.
Yeah, like if you've used your platform to demean and defile the common man to the extent that so many of these conservative influencers and pundits have done, it's just like there's no redemption for you. Like you're not only profiting off of the misery of the common folk and the marginalized. It's you have y- you clearly have no remorse doing so. So
Mhm.
Right.
like
They're
why like
sociopaths.
yeah. So
Yeah.
They have no conscience.
yeah. So it's just like you
Scare
just need
them
to be
back
done
into the
away with,
closet. Yeah. Scare them
please.
Yeah,
back into
no.
the closet. Get the, if
Yeah.
they have these, sociopathic views, I want them to be afraid to say it publicly, make it socially,
Yeah,
unacceptable again, bully them, as you were saying.
Right.
yeah.
We can't have a society with these kinds of people spreading their bullshit, their hate, their conspiracy theories. So we have to do everything in our power to, as you put it, Dieter, even though it sounds fascistic, cleanse the country of it, because we cannot survive as a country with
Mhm.
these people in control of everything. So anything we can to facilitate that social shift, we have to do, and that's what I'm all about right now.
Make it so that
Right
they're
on.
embarrassed to publicly vocalize their vulgar ideas. Like, period.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, on
100%.
that note, for Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report, thank you so much for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you
And
so much.
StatPat, Stateless Patriot.
Course.
I am Dieter McBusiness, America's American Wasp, gone West Coastal, reminding you that you don't get change in America by asking nicely, and you don't defeat white trash fascism by asking nicely. See you later,
Everybody have a
guys.
good
Have a
night.